It's a very warm welcome to Ross and our Invercargill NZ Loyal candidate, Dave Kowalewski. Dave, I'm going to begin with you. Sorry to talk over you, Ross, but you and I have talked about this party as being the party that listens to the people of New Zealand, the party that will truly serve and honour the wishes of the people of New Zealand, and that will be open to discussions. Tell me how this interview has come around from your perspective, Dave. You rang me and said what?
Well, how this started was I got an email that said, I've looked at your fishing policies and decided, the email said something along the lines, and you might better help me with this, Ross, but I was a supporter, or I was totally in love with everything you were saying and supportive. And then when the fishing policy came out, there was things in there that concerned this person, and that was how it started for me. And so because I try to get through my emails and answer the ones I need to do exactly what you just said, because if I do my job properly, I'm a people's representative, and so I want to take their concerns and listen to them. And so that's what I was trying to do. And I thought it's very valid. Some of the points where I need to talk about this, and it's a hard, like everything, often things are complex. It's very tricky to sort of negotiate some of these waters. What is the answer? What is the solution? And I think what you say, Liz, is so good, that we have to work towards better solutions or better end results that is good for everybody. So it's good for the country, it's good for the environment or whatever, but it's also good for the person it's involved in. We can't just ride roughshod over the top of people and their livelihood. So on that grounds, I rang Ross and I started talking to him about what his fears and concerns were with some of our policies, I suppose. And then I thought, well, that's great points, valid points. It would be good to have discussions around this. So that's when I talked to you, and I've continued to talk to Ross, and quite interested in seeing how we can find a solution to these issues, and also getting the input from the people who are on the ground in the industry. Like, I suppose the model at the moment is we get dictated to from the top. Central government controls every aspect of every one of our lives. We don't really have a say as the people of this country. And that's so, as a New Zealand loyal government, we don't want to do that. We want to listen to the people. We want to have the people with the power have their freedom back, their life back, their country back, and the decisions are made, including them, that are based around their input for a good solution and outcome. So I suppose that's why we're here, and that's why it'd be great to hear what these fishermen have to say and to hear their side of the story. And I suppose it's a great thing for me, because I think it's so important. Sorry, I'm waffling here. I was finished with this. I think it's a great point you can't just say something. And like what I said to people on the phone recently, you're far better off to actually model what you talk about. Like, when you bring it back to being a parent, I'm better off as a father to say, actually, I was wrong. I got that wrong, and I'm sorry, because you can't be right all the time anyway. But that's actually more powerful than being right, because you're modeling to your children that you are humble and you're open enough to say you're wrong, and you're modeling this repentance, or modeling to the children that you do have to, sometimes you're wrong. And that's like, I feel like that's what we're doing here, Liz, is that we're saying, if we've got this wrong, we want to listen to you, and your input's valuable to us. And I think it's actually more important that not that we're right the first time, it's that we're listening and we're humble enough and open enough to say, actually, we might have got something wrong, and we want to listen, and we want to be big enough to say we're sorry if we've got things wrong. I suppose that's maybe my point. Hope that makes sense.
Dave, there's no waffle there. You're speaking from your heart, and you're speaking from my heart, actually, because that's exactly what I feel. Ross, I was very concerned when Dave rang me and he said, yeah, but Ross said, oh, it won't make any difference. She'll have her rules and she'll have her way of doing, and she's not going to listen. And it actually hurt, because I have felt that, just like you have with this government. Many of us have. You send in petitions, you send in letters, you stand up outside Parliament. They just ride roughshod over us and ignore us all. And I can absolutely promise you that I have zero time today, but this is so important that I have made this hour so we can talk about what's worrying you, and also show New Zealand what a new way of working with the people is. So Ross, just tell me, why did you say to Dave, there's no chance she'll listen, she'll have her rules and she'll just push them at us? Why did you say that? Tell us what you've experienced as a fisherman from the last governments or decades.
Sorry, Liz, but just by reading your policy that says there'll be no more commercial fishing was a big negative for everyone, really. Like, there's been a few people seen that on your website and thought, Fisherman, and they've gone, nah, we're not voting for them. That's not how it is. With commercial fishing is probably the most over-regulated industry in this country, maybe the world. Cameras on boats, ER reporting, like it's huge. And then for you guys to come around and say there's no more commercial fishing, we're going to push it out to 12 miles, and most of our boats are all wee boats, and we've been doing it. I've been doing it myself for 40 plus years now. Brought up with it through Dunedin at the Portobello Aquarium, and lived the ocean all my life and really like it. My kids sort of been part of it. And and then all of a sudden we're going to be shut out of it, and you think, well, hang on a second, it's not the way it should be. It's like you say, it's a people's decision. We love it, we make a living out of it, we don't get wealthy out of it. There's a lot of money tied up in commercial fishing, and we do our best to look after the environment, the birds, the seals, the dolphins. We're our environment friendly. We make things that work for us on the boat, which is better for the environment, which we would like to see MPI push into place, but they just don't change policy. So
they don't change. So you've felt over the last decades never listened to. So that's what you expected from anyone who puts out a policy. We'll stick to it no matter what, and we're not going to listen. Is that what your expectation was, Ross?
Well, when you see a thing, policy, commercial fishing, no more fishing, we did think we weren't going to be listened to, all right.
Yep. Yeah. Well, this is a different kind of governance. So what we're doing is putting out policies that I had based my research on, and I talked to some fishermen for up to 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I've got pages of notes, and one of the things I went back to some of them. So if you don't mind, I'll just quote. It's interesting. They said, yeah, it is different down south. It is different down where you are, and part of it is because there are fewer people down where you are, whereas in the Hauraki Gulf in Auckland, the commercial fishing has to stop because the fish stock is about to collapse. So they have to be pushed out, the commercial ones, out of the 12-mile zone. But what he said, and I'm very keen on this, you have a different kind of species that don't take a line. Can you tell me if that's right? And what are the differences in North and South fishing for a start?
Well, I think North fishing, they've still, I don't know if they hit 300 the size, but snapper's one of the big ones up here, which is the recreationals love going out in their boats and catching snapper. We don't get snapper down here. We sort of work on more of a blue cod thing. So they're on the reefs, they're on the rocks, roundabout on the shells. We don't work on the rocks or the reefs with their trawl gear, so we're limited to the sand, which is good. So if we go on the rocks, we'll just destroy our gear. So yeah, that's totally different. You're two totally different fisheries. And then, as you can see, today we've got probably 45, 50 knots ahead of pretty much for the whole week. So we're very limited to our time we put into the ocean down here. So we get a lot of time off, which saves the fish. And then you've got the quota. So everything is, so it's pretty well, well, I actually thought North Island was good too, but it's pretty well sorted up down here anyway, as far as.
This is good. What do you think of the quota management system, Ross?
It is what it is, and I think at this stage it's to take it away. There's so much money involved, but I think what it is just when it came out, it was just absolute. Like I was before the quota, and it was absolute. Just it was no good. It was no good for the industry. I could use a bit harder words, but I mean now it's in there, and I think it was monitored properly by proper people. People that cared. I think they do 3 or 4 species a year if you're lucky. I don't know. It must be 100 species, a couple of 100 species of fish. And they got the figures. The figures are on them every month. They know exactly what people are unloading, the effort that goes in, so they can monitor it a lot better than what they're doing it up and down the quota system. If there's something that's struggling a wee bit, bring the quota down. If it's increasing, go the other way. It'd be so easy to do, but it's just how it is.
Well, it's how it is, but we can always improve it. And as with the policy that we put out for Loyal on Fishing, I can improve it. And does it make you feel at least heartened that you know that as a fishing person with ideas, you will be listened to by this party? Because I want to get into your ideas in a minute.
Right, Liz. Yeah, it is good to be listened to. The 10's here now, Liz. But yeah, no, it is good to be listened to. And it's just when we seen that policy out there, well, obviously you're not listening to the commercial fisherman. She's got her information to somewhere, and not from us, because surely that wouldn't have come out in the first place.
Yeah, no, I've talked to commercial fishermen up in this northern part of the North Island, where they are worried about the stock collapsing because of the overfishing. But I want to start here with Glenn, just welcoming you in. Glenn, it might be good to turn off whatever that other device is. Is it your phone? We've just gone ahead with the interview because we were waiting for a while and Glenn had some technical problems. The main thing was I wanted to hear your issues. So welcome, Glenn. If you can turn the other device, that'd be great.
Yeah.
While he's doing that,
Yeah,
Dave, do you have any questions for Ross about what he said so far?
Me, questions for Ross. Well, I've really enjoyed talking to Ross it's a hard one for me because I've got a lot on my plate and a lot to learn, and you can get a mental overload. But I actually found it really interesting, and a few of Ross's points that he raised were really intriguing. And it's so good to look at things with a approach or the big picture, backing the truck up and actually looking at the whole picture. I don't know if it's wise to touch on this, but a few things Ross said to me. One of them was, I suppose Tiwaiwai Bay and how the fish, it was a breeding ground. You interject here, Ross, any stage that I've got this wrong, but he was telling me that it was a breeding ground and there was an abundance of fish and it was really a rich breeding ground and a lot of fish there. And I suppose on the surface of things, you could say, or the bad fishermen overfished it, they raped and pillaged their industry, and now there's no fish in there, and the whole ecosystem or whatever, the fisheries of Tiwaiwai Bay has changed, and you could, on the surface of it, you could blame the fishermen. But when you start talking to Ross and you look at the big picture, he was saying about the Waia River flowing into the Tiwaiwai Bay and how that when they put the hydro system in place for Tiwai, I suppose, was it Ross, and that they diverted the water out to Deep Cove, and a lot of the water now isn't running out into Tiwaiwai Bay, the mineral-rich water down the Waia with the limestone cliffs, and instead of that water running out like it used to, all the mineral-rich water running out there, it's now diverted over to the west coast. And partly the reason is not that fishermen destroyed Tiwaiwai Bay and overfished it. The problem is actually the diversion of the water has actually taken nutrients away, and so the breeding ground of that Tiwaiwai Bay has been depleted, and it's not by overfishing or fishermen not looking after the industry. And another interesting point that he made that I loved was, well, I didn't love it, I actually hated hearing it, but he was talking about and correct me if I'm wrong here, Ross, too, but the scallop industry in Nelson, I think he said, and I'm running off memory here, and I've got a lot going in, but there was something like
Well, say that,
22
Ross.
boats,
Let's throw that story to Ross. Can you tell Ross? Did Dave accurately reflect what you said about that mineral-rich waters now being diverted? And that was accurate. Okay, so we know he's a good listener, which is great. Tell us about the scallop industry. What's the story of that, Ross? What's the story there?
Well, it's just the theory is like there was a good scallop there. I think there's 23 scallop boats reached in the Nelson Bay years ago. And then they started planting a few trees around the hills and pine trees, and then they get all that wash off the hills, all the wash down, and it's somebody put a pot out there. I think a few years ago now I was talking to the chap, and he put a pot out, and he reckons the time he pulled that pot up after 6 months, it was under 1.5 meters of this stuff that's blown off the hills, coming down the rivers and the rain, and just smothering the whole. And that's what's happened.
Is that to do with the pine plantations, Ross?
Yeah,
that's a disaster.
Under that. So
I feel like we're being a bit rude not bringing Glenn in. Glenn, could you just introduce yourself? I am so sorry that we haven't had you before, but Ross, I know you had some technical problems. Ross wanted you to come in. What's your role in terms of fishing in that part of the world, Glenn? Oh, he's frozen. All right. Is Glenn there?
So with that that silt, Ross, that was coming down off the hill from the pines, is that after they've milled the pines that's causing that, or was there actually toxins running out of the pines before they milled it that changed things? What's your opinion there?
That's more than I know, Dave. Yeah, that's more than I could say on that one. Like, I know a lot of trucks go up and down the road and take mud, and with the rain, and then the water washes it down, and one of the good things of pines is turpentine. That's a turpentine comes off pine, so I would imagine that's too good for anything, really.
Okay,
and so the pot was under 1.5 meters of silt, but you said that the scallop industry was now non-existent. There's no scallops left. Is that correct?
And
so for me, once again, you could in ignorance say, oh, they overfished it and the fishermen ruined the industry. But that's what it looks like on the surface, and that's what I'm learning, Liz, after talking to Ross. It's like, wow, when you back up and have a look at it from a bit further back with a big picture view, and you realize actually there's a cause and effect to everything, and it's not necessarily as it seems. It's not necessarily the fishermen that ruined the scallop industry in Nelson. There's other reasons, and I suppose that's why it's really important to listen, and to these people who are in these industries, they know more than and anybody who's going to be in a governmental role, how can we impose rules onto people if we aren't involving them in the process? Because they're the ones who know the industry. They know the ins and outs of it. And probably like farming, fishermen are all about their industry. They want it to be sustainable. They want it to be there in a healthy form for their children and grandchildren. They don't want to destroy it. It's like some people have a boom and bust mentality. They don't care, and they're happy to destroy and plunder. But fishermen, like farmers, well, from what I've listened to Ross and that, it seems to me like they're nice, good people who care about their industry. And why wouldn't they, you know?
So Ross, would that reflect it, that you are really responsible? That I personally think that the quota system is not a responsible way, that we could do a lot better on that there's been a massive wastage that there should never have been. But you're talking about, I'd love to see a lot more small businesses, fishing businesses out there, where you really do have maybe a dad and son, and you're out there building something together. For that policy, one of the people I talked to is a third generation fisherman. And up in the north, he's given up because there just isn't the stock. It's so sad. But his grandfather had masses of fish. Now, down south, it sounds, from what you're saying, as if fishing north and south in New Zealand is very different. Would you agree with that?
I think it's the weather's a big part of what stays down here. The quota industry, and we all sort of work together in a roundabout way. We just sort of trawling. We are limited to, I think there was a thing I seen last night that showed that thing I shared with David actually says we trawl on 2% of the inshore grounds in New Zealand of the water. So there's a lot of area that for rejuvenating and coming right. But I think like we just had a storm the last few days, and the amount of impact that trawling does on a Te Wairau basis, say there's 10 or 12 trawlers, a storm in 2 days will have a massive impact to what we put on there. It just changes the whole thing. So there is really no impact as far as what we do with our game, but here.
Well, I love that you're teaching Dave and me already. If we're going to represent the people, you can't, in many cases, perhaps make ideas for one part of New Zealand that will apply in another. You have to really get into the nuance and the subtlety. Now, I had always thought, let's put out a kind of skeleton of policies, and then when we get in, discuss them with the industry people right across the board. But it's clear that north to south, there are vast differences. What is the base of it down there? Because the fishermen, some of them up here, they talked about the seafloor is sort of more sand and mud up here. And interestingly, one of them told me that in the late 80s, they just went through and flattened the coral because they wanted to get all the fish that was hiding in the coral. They just totally wrecked the environment with no concern at all back then. What's your base down there in the South Island?
I was imagine be well before the 80s, Liz, but yeah, maybe. But yeah, I know years ago, a couple of the big trawlers went down the back of Stewart Island with a big chain between them and just shot away down there and just sort of cleared the bottom so they'd go through. But it was all sand anyway, I think, where they were working. But yeah, I just like the quota industry. There is areas like we got Area 3, which is sort of south of Waimaru, and it goes down. Then we join Area 5, and that goes up to our like up towards Big Bay, Milford, north of Milford. So that's one area. And then as you go further north, there's different areas for the quota. So everything supposedly is monitored differently. But when you're getting, I'm not having to go to the recreationals here, but they says there was 8,000. This a couple of years ago, 8,000 boats a week go out into the Hauraki Gulf. That's That's recreational. Yep. That's a lot of boats. That's a lot of people. That's even if you allow 3 fish and there's 3 people per boat, you work that out. There's 70,000 or 60,000 fish a week coming out of there just on It has an impact.
It's collapsing in the Hauraki Gulf. So I would, obviously with more consultation, we have to listen to the fishing people of the north, but I think they want much greater control up here so the stock doesn't collapse. But down south, it seems very different. You have a lot fewer boats, and you have, as you keep saying, the weather will keep you inside. What happens then is a replenishment of that environment that you're in. Is that what you're saying there, Ross?
Yeah, it just gets a break. It gets a break. So I think we've been 2 weeks tied at the wharf now. So without a boat, there's a few bigger boats. You can see them outside on our monitoring system, outside the 12-mile limit, charging up and down outside Real Pookie. And they just, because they can just work up and down there, the weather doesn't really worry them too much. But we're all tied to the wharf because they're too small. And so it just gets a chance to come right.
Yeah, that's actually what I've got in my notes as well, because I was talking to some of those people who helped me with the policy, just saying, I'm going to talk to you and I just need to know what you know about the South. Now, this bottom trawling, I would like to know from you if you think it is destructive, because certainly there is a perception out there that bottom trawling is very hard on the whole ecosystem. And as you trawl along, you might take out a lot of the smaller creatures that are the base for the food chain to feed the fish that you want to get to. So where do you stand on that, Ross? Because yeah, that's had some bad publicity.
I think, no, we're quite happy that we would. We put a big fish on the nets ourselves because we were concerned that we were taking weird stuff out. So the illegal size net is 4 inch. A lot of us out there have gone to a 5.5 inch mesh, 5.5 inch cod end. And I don't believe we do any harm to the industry at all as far as the wee fish go. What we get on the deck pretty much comes home in the fish tub, so there's not much wastage at all.
And we'll just have time out, Dave. It's banging again. So just pull it out from your shirt.
Sorry.
It's banging. That's okay. Okay, we'll just do that as something. There's something banging. Something
It
banging.
might be best my feet on the seat.
Oh, okay. Is Glenn still there?
No, he's gone again.
Can you guys hear that interference? There's a real noise interference at the moment.
But I wonder that's sort of.
Oh, is it windy outside your car?
Is it my beard on the headset?
Sheesh, maybe it is.
Can you hear? Is that noisy?
Yeah, there's something banging there, and it's quite distracting. That's weird.
I can't hear anything, and there's nothing here that I can hear myself. So
That's a bit better. Anyway, we'll keep going. Yeah, at this stage, Ross, please apologize to your friend Glenn. I could see he was trying to get on. He was trying with 2 devices. I just left it and we talked, but we simply couldn't see him and it seemed to freeze. That noise is bizarre. Hey, Dave, is it very windy outside your car?
not too bad. Like, it is windy, but it's not at all rocking my car at the moment.
That's I've
Nothing
never
that would
had
make
an
a noise.
interview where that sound is. Okay,
Should I try unplugging this headset and see?
No, because I
unplug
think
it,
you
Liz,
need it. Try just pulling it out from your beard. Maybe it is banging the beard. Just try pulling it out. Just keep it on because it's a nicer sound. Okay, we'll do it again for the poor old editor's going to have a lot of work. Okay, we'll do it again. So, Ross, my friend, what would you do if you were standing with us in New Zealand Oil to represent the people of New Zealand, the fishing stocks, the replenishing and the wise management of our fish, and also your friends and colleagues in the fishing industry there? What would you advocate? That's putting a big load of policy making in 2 minutes, please.
I'm just trying to get you to take this non-policy, non-fishing thing off.
Yeah, but what would you do? I'd like to know if you could blue sky anything. Yeah.
I think when I looked at it, I think we sort of looked at it last night and the figures and I don't believe you can cut the quota at this stage. I don't believe that could happen because there's just so much money involved in it. It's just, mega dollars. There's a lot of people have bought quota. There's a lot of money tied up in it. So I believe how the industry is running now is, well, down this way is good. I know a young fellow that got out there a wee while ago because he's just had enough of the MPI putting so many regulations on us. So he says, no, I've had enough. So I'm not getting out.
Well, can I ask here, is the quote, because Liz, you were thinking about getting rid of the quota, is that correct?
Yes, definitely, because up north, that's the feedback I got. What Ross said, a lot of smaller fishermen are just getting out of it because it's all too regulated. And Dave and Logan Evans and I and the team have often talked about how we need to lift the regulations off our farmers. And it sounds like we have to do the same for our fishermen.
When I mean regulated, they've just spent $68 million putting cameras on our boats.
Oh.
That's what the regulations is. Like we've just had ER, which is electronic reporting, which tells them where the boats are all the time. So we haven't really got a problem with it. So it's quite good safety-wise. If something goes wrong, they can work out where that boat was before something went wrong. And then, but these cameras, so we got on my boat myself, I've got 4 cameras that are due to be turned on the 1st of November, I think it is. And they just monitor what's happening on our boat. I mean, it's so over-regulated. It's unreal. We don't want cameras on the boats. We don't need that. We sort of, this over-regulated. We just got so many rules and regulations, and people have just had enough. They just want us to bring home any wee fish, and just goes on. Something that's, at least we fish that are too small, like you say. We might get 4 or 5 of them. And rather than putting them back alive, they want us to bring them home, put them in the freezer, bring them back, and they're going to die. Whereas if we put them back, they'll all survive. But anyway, that's the story, and that's where we're at.
I agree with you. That's part of what Loyal is all about, to get the government out of our lives. So at no stage did we intend to come, thumping over the top of you. What we did when sitting down with that policy was, how can we make sure the fish stocks are good, so enough smaller operation fishing people in New Zealand can really make a living, and maybe say to the big boys, you've made millions and millions and millions, and you've actually used and wasted a lot of the fishing stock. You're going to have to back off a bit while we let our smaller operation fishers in New Zealand, fishing men and women, do well. That's really what was behind it. So obviously it'll need a bit of tweaking, but can you sense, Ross, that that was the spirit of the idea in that policy? Could you sense that?
I could just see that it was no commercial fishing, but I thought it certainly needed some tweaking, all right. But as far as it just says, that's it, no more commercial fishing inside 12 miles bar, the odd longline boat, and the odd, taking tourists out of their boats, and that sort of thing. Because it's not really focusing on us, and I don't know how many people are tied up in the inshore fisheries, but all of a sudden you're talking 10 or 20,000 people are going to be unemployed, and you're going, shit, that ain't a very good policy.
Well, and can you not go outside the 12-mile limit? Can you go outside there, or you can't trawl there?
No, we're outside the 12-mile limit the other day, actually, just for a look. But no, we're only 40 foot. We go outside the 12-mile limit. We're working like, what these boats are, 120, 140 foot boats are huge big things.
Okay, and can you understand in the North Island that is appropriate, where the Hauraki Gulf is being way overfished? Does that make some sense to you there?
Yeah, I don't really know much about that North Island. I sort of, I've been based out here my whole life, so I can't really comment on that. Like, I work as far as, have worked, but basically I work south now, but have worked as far as Belclutha and up around the Nuggets, north of Belclutha, and we run pretty good. All of us sort of, the boats from the deep come south, and at times the bluff boats go north, but we sort of work that area, and we because that's where the quota is. The quota is combined between the 3 and 5 area, 3 and 5. So that's probably that area the boats work, but we don't go any further ourselves, any further north than the Nuggets, really, Belclutha.
Well, look, we're having really bad sound problems. I don't know what it is, whether there is another electrical interference. Something's going on where it's making it very hard to continue on with this. But Ross, I very much appreciate talking to you, and I'm interested when I come down on the Loyal tour. I'd like to meet you face to face, and we'll sit down and I'll take some of the notes that I took screeds of notes for that fishing policy that we did from fishing people up here. Clearly, I need to modify that a bit with the needs of the South Island fisheries businesses. I'd still love to see our little fishing businesses get going at the cost of these ginormous ones. Would you like that idea?
Yeah, I'd like to see us stay going anyway. I'd certainly like to see us stay going. But sort of, I'm not familiar with the big ones either. Like rule outside the 12-mile limit. I don't really look at that side of things too much. But obviously they put a lot of pressure on the fisheries outside of the 12-mile limit anyway.
Lovely. Dave, is there anything you want to say to finish? It's either the wind. I know you guys have got big winds down there, but there's some terrible interference. So the sound is awful.
Ross has got really hard to hear now. A couple of points that I would like to talk just quickly as we're ending here, but obviously, clearly, having regional rules or bringing things back to the province or back to what's right in Southland isn't going to be right in Wellington or in Auckland or in Northland, and that's true of anything. It's not just fishing, and so that's why we want to decentralise government. That's why we want to give the power to the people and have good policies and rules that suit the people where they live, not a blanket one-size-fits-all dictatorship where you must all comply to these rules, because it's not just a one-size-fits-all system, is it? It's always going to be working in with the people where they live. So that's important. One of the things I wonder, Liz, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with the quota system, is one of your concerns the wastage, about you know, you have to go out and you're allowed, let's just hypothetically put numbers out there, but 1 ton of snapper and you catch 5 ton of bikill and you discard all that and it goes to waste, and then you come in with your 1 ton of snapper. Is that what worries you about the quota system, Liz?
Very much. And I'm suspicious of it too, because you can see the same pattern coming in with carbon, you know, and carbon tax and carbon numbers. Some accountants have got hold of, you know, let's run the world like it's an accountancy system. And it's much more subtle than that. And we're going to have much more subtle discussions with one another to capture these nuances. But I don't like all this black and white numbers, because it does result in ludicrous outcomes, Dave and Ross.
And we don't want waste. And this is one thing that I've always thought, is if, like anything, you can't control, like Ross can't go out there and say, okay, snapper only into the net, please, or whatever it is down here, blue cod. We have to have a system in place where there's no wastage. But after talking to Ross the other day and listening to him, it sounds to me, and this is where we probably need you again, Ross, but is it fair to say that you guys don't have the wastage with regards to the quota system like you'd be led to believe online, like on the people, the protesting type people? They tell you that there's all this wastage. Is that true or is that not true? From what I was talking to you about the other day, it seems like there's not much wastage down here anymore at all.
No, pretty much. Everything we catch, no company. Everything. The company bought it all, so everything's put ashore.
I think we're going to have to leave it there, because it's definitely, Ross, your sound. And you're saying you've got about 50k an hour winds, or big winds down there, haven't you?
Yeah, it's about, yeah, it has been. It's a my sound, isn't it?
Pretty wild. It's getting really bad, but let's meet when I come down on the Loyal tour, which will be around about the time of the election. And so we'll have a talk, we'll discuss more of what your concerns are. But Ross, I can tell you, when a Loyal governance crew get in, what we intend to do is flesh out those policy statements by, guess what? By listening to the people that those policies will affect. We are not here to boss and command and dictate and bully. We are here to offer ideas that are new, and then listen to what the people want and modify the ideas. Does that make you feel more relaxed about what your concerns were?
Certainly some hope anyway. It's good.
Yeah, we've got to do
If
it.
I could add to that, Liz, you've got to look at this through the lens of Ross's life, and it's the same with farming. But Ross has been fighting the government, fighting MPI over regulation, over compliance, rules and regulations. He comes home from work or goes to work with a feeling of dread in his guts, because today might be the day that he goes to prison for 3 years, or that he gets $100,000 fine for trying to do his job. And it's just disgusting, and you can't live like that. It's making criminals out of innocent people, and this is what Ross is fighting for. And after listening to him, all of the fishermen are feeling the same way. They hate their own industry for the fact that they don't enjoy it anymore, and they all want to sell their boats and get out, because it's too controlled, it's too over-regulated, and their lives are just in disarray by this rules imposed by the government. And then here's Ross sitting there at home when your policy comes out, and it's like, we're going to ban it entirely. And so these people are like gone from getting regulations and squashed down, and then suddenly he feels, correct me if I'm wrong, Ross, but I'm speaking for you a bit here, but suddenly he feels like, we've been going from a government who's fighting us to a government who's going to completely destroy my industry. And that was Ross's concern. If I paraphrase that at all accurately, Ross?
You did right, Dave. Yeah, that was what the email was all about.
Yeah. He's obviously listened really well to you. And the point is that yours is a trawling fishing along the bottom of the ocean, and the one up north is a line fishing. And so they're different, or a net fishing. So it gets back to what Dave said. We have to listen to the people who the ideas will affect. And this is what I want to do, Ross. When we get in, I want to take over TV1, and I want to put in really good people, not those people who've sold us all out over the last few years, telling the government's lies, but people who will have programs every night, questioning what we're doing, and getting in, for example, on fishing, getting a panel of you, and we all talk about it, and the Kiwis can watch and engage and say, oh, that's an interesting idea. I didn't know fishing was doing that. Oh, I like that, guys. I like the way that guy Ross talks. That makes a lot of sense. And together, New Zealanders will piece together what is best and most helpful and most serves the people of New Zealand. So it's going to take a lot of adults in the room and the governance idea we have, as opposed to a few dictators bullying and hurting and, making people feel sick. That really makes my heart ache for you. That's awful.
they don't make rules. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ross, but they don't make rules that include the people, that consider or listen to the people. The rules are always coming from, at the moment, dare I say it, faulty science or agendas imposed on us by globalists or by other people or by some ideology from over wherever. And it's not ever for the best thing for the people of the country, is it? And that's the massive point of difference here, I believe, with Loyal and what we can do to help this country. I would have to say here, when I hear you guys talking about the Hauraki Gulf and the sustainability of that, and if there's how many, Ross, 8,000 boats going out a week into the Hauraki Gulf, we have to possibly sometimes make some really hard decisions, which is, I'm sorry, but we can't keep taking, it's like running a business. You can't spend more than you make. You go bankrupt. You can't keep taking more fish than is getting replenished. And so there sadly sometimes might have to be some changes made and some sacrifices. And that might not just affect fishermen, Ross? That might affect the recreational guys just as much. If it's the right thing to do and it's going to affect your life and make your life hard, it doesn't mean you don't do it. And that's not just true of farming or fishing, or it's also true of recreational fishermen. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, I think they take their fair share of fish. You're like, I seen a comment there on your page a while ago. You know, somebody made a comment about the commercial fishermen and how there was no blue cod out here, and all the limits. The limits we cut from 30 to 15, I think it is now, or 10. And he says, you know, they've cut our limits. He said, well, 15 years ago, when they set those limits, there was only 5 or 10 boats at the wharf, about going out. Now there's 40 or 50. So, you know, you times that by 3 people, it's a lot more fish getting taken ashore. So that's why the limit's been cut, because there's 4 people doing it. That's for the recreationals.
We'll have to have these deeper discussions, but Ross, and you know, it's been a bit ragged around the edges with the sound, and I apologize for that to people listening, but I think the fishermen who are interested in what you have to say will be staying with it. I've really enjoyed it, and I think this is a way to work together, and I think this is a new plan for governance and for government, is to be a listening, serving government. So Ross, let's take it from here. This is just the beginning. There'll be future conversations. I hope you've enjoyed it, Ross. Have you felt heard?
Yeah, that sounds good. It's certainly a big improvement on what I seen the other day anyway.
Yeah, and it's nice to see how hard Dave has listened to you. He seems to have captured what you've said. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, he's definitely taken it on board. You've done well.
So what about the last word going to you, Ross? How would you like to close this? What's your advice for those people?
Good luck with putting this. I'd love to see us get on.
Wonderful. And I'm sorry about the sound, everybody. Yeah, it's been a real delight. I'll see you on the Loyal tour, Ross, down south.
Sounds good. Good to catch
Okay.
up,
Thanks, Dave. Thank
Bye-bye.
you both. I've enjoyed it. Very interesting. Bye.
Thanks, Ross.